Well, here is a controversial weather report for you. There's a gigantic storm named Candace coming to Australia in the month of November. She's tipped to be so devastating that the Australian government is doing all it can to stop her entering our orbit. Now, some scribes are calling her unhinged and abusive. Others say she's just full of drivel. Now, as I began to notice how alarmed so many Australians were about her arrival, well, I was compelled to meet this fiery natural phenomenon. Joining me now from Nashville, Tennessee, is political conservative, activist, author and media personality Candace Owens. Candace, welcome to ADH TV.
Thank you for having me. I wish I looked like bigger and scarier to meet all of the hype and the smearing that's been going around. But yeah, I'm just a mom of three who does a podcast, and it's not nearly as scary as they're making it sound.
You don't have horns or extra arms or legs. You're just human, are you?
No, it is very funny watching the media do these sorts of things when it sort of feels like they just press a button and then like somebody from above tells them, this person attack and smear and say whatever you want about them. We just need to convince the public that they're the devil. And so it's been very strange to watch that and have it be about yourself and go, what on earth are you talking about? How can you keep taking things that I say out of context on purpose and not even have the decency to allow me to defend myself?
We'll get to some of that in just a second, but I understand you're very busy today. You've conducted an interview with Sky News Australia and also with the Today Show at Channel 9. How did those interviews go?
Those interviews were cancelled. Let's see. I was told by Sky News Australia that they did not have enough time to fit me in, despite the fact that we had the interview scheduled. And then
hang on. They didn't have enough time. Did they really say they didn't have enough time? They are 24/7 news.
Yeah.
Maybe if they had 30 hours in a single day, they might be able to fit you in, do you think?
Yeah, you would think so, but they couldn't fit me in to speak for myself. But they did on that very same day allot a 15-minute segment to tell everybody how awful I was. That was done by Andrew Bolt. What a courageous man. I'm going to smear a mother of three, and we're too busy.
So they said too busy to do an interview, and then they bagged you on air. Why wouldn't they just be truthful and honest and tell you why you can't come on?
Well, because that would require some integrity, some honesty. And of course, they knew when you know the stuff that you are saying is just plain lies, the best thing to do is just not allow the person to have a platform to dispute them. And since they were taking things out of context to make me sound like a monster, they needed to not have me there to actually be myself, who was very far from a monster and far from hateful, because that would have just disrupted their narrative. And you don't want to get in the way of a good time. So I was not allowed to come on.
It's quite extraordinary because in their programming, they have bagged Vladimir Putin for what he's done to Ukraine. But if Vladimir Putin had offered himself up for an interview to Sky News tomorrow, they would take him in a heartbeat. But you are worse than Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, I think actually somebody said it the right way earlier when they said that actually what they're threatened about is that people will listen to my message and that it will resonate and will be so rational and understandable that people might go, okay, these are actually some good ideas. And so it's not me that they hate. It's the sensibility behind what I'm pitching, which is just for people to sort of wake up to exactly what it is that Sky News is doing. And I hate that this was also the Today Show. They did the exact same thing. They canceled me. And then they went on to have a 15-minute panel discussion about how awful I was. Same exact scenario. Like, we're too busy, but not busy enough to talk about you for 15 minutes, just too busy to allow you to interject any truth into what we're saying. And it's really just the shoddiest journalism. It's such an embarrassment to them because we do have the internet, and I do think that people are going to get around the narrative. But I do want to say this also, what really bothers me about it is that for now 6 years, these are the same platforms that applauded me, who commended me, who talked about how strong I was when I went after my own community rightfully, when Black Lives Matter was out of control, how they were using racism and the smear of racism to allow people to commit crimes. I mean, you had people that were quite literally running into Macy's and stealing a bunch of stuff and then saying, oh, but George Floyd died. And I said, this is not okay. You don't get to use the smear of racism to allow bad behavior. And then the second a different scenario happened, you fast forward and the subject changes, the subject matter changed post October 7th, which was a horrific tragedy. But then you started seeing into the future that people were then saying, well, any criticism that you say at all about Israel is now anti-Semitism. And the second that I said that's not okay, I'm holding you to the exact same standard that I've held my own community to, they instantly flipped on me. And that leaves a very bad taste in my mouth. Do you know what I mean? And then now that she's unhinged, she's crazy, she's out of control, she's lost the plot. That's just not acceptable.
What I have discovered with those Jewish media hosts in America, from watching them very, very closely, is that if you criticise Israel for what they're doing against Hamas, that is bombing schools, hospitals and refugee camps, you are treated very poorly. Do you think that was your crime, Candace?
It was. And I said that, by the way, I explicitly said that it is known in American politics and American media that if you critique this foreign nation of Israel, you will have to deal with the effects. Like, they will outwardly say, we will ruin your lives, we will come for you, you will lose your job. You're not allowed to critique this foreign nation. And as a sovereign nation, that shouldn't be the circumstance. We shouldn't have any nation. I love Australia. My husband's from the UK. I would not be comfortable with that being the circumstance regarding any nation, essentially holding a figurative gun to our heads and saying you must say that everything that we do is amazing. I'm a Christian. I'm not comfortable with the amount of Palestinian children that are being killed. I'm not comfortable with the fact that I can't even discuss it without having my livelihood being threatened. And so what they've done as this sort of clever trick, of course, if following BLM and George Floyd, I was to put together a bunch of clips of you or other people discussing Black Lives Matter or Black people, they go, oh my gosh, you're obsessed. Why does this person keep talking about Black Lives Matter? Well, because this has become a major topic in America, not because we're obsessed with talking about Black people and racism. Yes. It's the same post-October 7th. It's a hot button topic. People are debating it. And now they're trying to pretend that it's like some obsession with hating Jewish people. Yeah. I love Jewish people. I've worked for Jewish people throughout my entire political career. But I am not going to be beholden to a foreign state that I believe is committing crimes against children simply because I'm friends with Jewish people. It doesn't even make any sense. They're not even Israeli citizens. Those are my fellow American people, and we should be actually on the same team here in demanding sovereignty from this foreign state.
You see, what Australian audiences need to be well aware of before they listen to your critics is the fact that the rules of engagement understood within the ranks of the Australian Defence Force is that if children are at risk, you do not fire. If it's a public school, no matter where the enemy is, if it's a hospital, you do not fire. I've spoken to ADF legal staff and anti-terrorism staff and operatives on this subject, and they would not do what Israel has done. So all of a sudden, you are simply echoing what other Defence forces are saying quietly, not vocally, but very quietly about what Israel is up to, the IDF is up to, and you are being pilloried for it. I think your criticism about Israel is right.
And I feel the same way, obviously, or I wouldn't have said it. And what's remarkable, which even is more confounding to me, is the fact that Israelis are boycotting Bibi Netanyahu. Israelis want him removed from office. Israelis feel that his response has been disproportionate and wrong. Probably the most powerful Jewish businessman that we have in the United States is a man named Ari Emanuel. Ari Emanuel spoke at the Simon Wiesenthal Center and said Bibi Netanyahu is doing this for Bibi Netanyahu and nobody else. He was not called an anti-Semite. And so, like I said, it leaves a very bad taste in my mouth when these same people who applauded me are now essentially pressing a button and saying, we're going to pretend that she's had some sort of a mental breakdown because she won't come out in support of Israel being just given, I guess, a blanket card to do whatever they want, or else we will smear you as an anti-Semite by taking clips out of context and repurposing them to make it seem like you've said something against all Jews in the world, which is an absolute nonsense. You
do not deny that the Holocaust took place, do you?
No, and they don't have a single clip of me saying that whatsoever. And in fact, just a couple of hours ago, Sky News, actually last night, I'm in America time, they contacted me at 9 p.m. and said that they were going to have on a Holocaust survivor. Okay, so this is the kind of emotional engineering. It's really disgusting if you think about it. They are using the pain of an actual Holocaust survivor because they want to just like land a scratch on my face. And they wouldn't tell me the name of the person. And they said, we're going to have this person on and they're going to demand that you don't have a visa, that you don't get a visa because of their pain. And I said, okay, if you read my quotation, I'd like to give a statement in its entirety about how you canceled me. And then they killed the segment and they put it, they relegated it to an article. And it's the same nonsense of emotional, trying to socially engineer people to believe that I've denied the Holocaust. I'm like, what on earth are you talking about? The worst part is what I said was a part of a broader segment. I was doing a segment on how absurd it is that the American intelligence officials actually took the Nazi scientists in the CIA program, rescued them and brought them to America and gave them top positions in the US government. That puts me in allegiance with Holocaust survivors. But of course, they didn't play that part of the clip.
Spot on. I have looked at what you have said and I've looked at it in context. And you are not a denier of the Holocaust, but not only are Australian media going ahead with the presumption that you are, they're now getting other people to criticise you for saying what you didn't say. I've got to take a quick break. I've got so much to talk to you about, including what the Australian government want to do with you, which is tear up a supposed visa, which of course hasn't arrived yet. We'll pursue that with you, Candace Owens, right after a quick break here at ADH TV. Don't go away. Controversial journalist, author, activist Candace Owens is coming to Australia in November. Well, maybe she won't, because the Home Affairs Minister of Australia, Tony Burke, said you'd better have a good refunds policy. That doesn't sound like a welcoming tone from the Australian government. Candace, do you deserve to be banned from coming down under?
I was so shocked to see this, and I will say maybe I am completely ignorant. I am ignorant of Australian politics or what is deemed to be an acceptable statement to make in the public, because in America, you could never say something like that as a politician. No matter how different we are, left and right, we are we hold free speech to be quite sacred.
Yes.
And we would never accept a politician saying, well, I'm going to go after this person, not because they're a criminal, not because they're a convicted pedophile, not because they've committed a shooting, but simply because I'm being lobbied to by organizations that are actually lying about what she said, right? It really boggled my mind when I saw the statement. I said, what's going on in Australia? How could this statement be said and there not be like outrage from the public? We would never want to see that, because we believe in debate. We believe in spirited debate. Even if I had said the stuff that they had said, people would be outraged. I didn't say the stuff that they are saying that I've said. And for him to make that statement, I felt remarkably let down by the fact that he was a Catholic, a fellow Catholic. There is something familial about being a Catholic and, just understanding the ways historically in which Catholics have been smeared and have been libeled, and for him to take that bait so easily and to introduce it to the public as it's my job to just condemn this Catholic mother was so wrong to me.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Can I just say to you, Candace Owens, that the truth is there is a streak of communism that has taken over in this country under our left-wing Labor government. We've got censorship czars running us, disinformation, misinformation legislation about to be tabled. We've got an e-safety czar that wants to not only disallow us from seeing very moderate acts of violence, which have been manifested in acts of terror on the internet, they want it banned from the internet right around the world as well. So there is a streak of communism, so no doubt anyone who's rather conservative in their views will be frowned upon, which is exactly what Tony Burke has done. But we've got a situation, Candace, where we're taking more Palestinian refugees than America has taken in 20 years. We know that from the polls that have been done recently that the majority of Palestinians are supportive of Hamas. So I know where the danger is in terms of importing individuals, and it's not importing someone like you.
And it's so funny that you say that, because that is one of the remarkable things, is that when you start speaking about those issues as a white person in Australia, you're called a racist. Why don't you want to import people from all over the world? And why don't you want to radically transform your society? On the other side of that, by the way, the Palestinians don't want to be in Australia. They're kind of you see this refugees are being passed all around the world. Who knows if they even want to be there? But we should have a right to actually speak about that. And I think truly one of the issues that they have with me is that I do believe I am the counter. And I am, I guess, in that way, they would deem that to be a threat to people that are seeking communism, for people that do want state control, for the state that wants to have these journalists, and I put that in quotation marks and air quotation marks, these journalists that are really just here to be mockingbirds for the state, right? To say what the state wants at the moment that the state tells them to say it. Then you don't like a Candace Owens, because I don't just believe in national sovereignty. I don't just believe in us being allowed to have a national identity, a national language. I also believe in personal sovereignty. I believe in families. I believe I spoke up against the state as they tried to extend their tentacles into every area of our lives during COVID. I've spoken about even having personal autonomy over your body, having a right to choose whether or not you want to take a vaccine. And this really gets to the heart of what they don't like about me, is that I believe in individuals. I don't believe in state solutions. I believe so many of the things that the state is pushing at this moment is utterly demonic, right? They don't want you to have a family. They don't want you to have faith. They want to be your faith. They want to be your family. They want you to turn to the government for every answer. They want your parents to die alone in hospitals.
Yeah.
And so if you really want to get to the nucleus of what it is that I have upset, it is the entire apparatus that seeks to control every individual's lives.
And it's interesting, the same has happened in Australia, where a lot of the bedwetters during COVID-19 grabbed onto the thigh of the government and said, please protect me. How many vaccines do you want me to take? 20? OK, I'll take 20. And you're telling us that they're safe, or we'll believe what you're saying, although the people that made them won't take legal responsibility for them. The penny didn't drop, though. And now they've become spokespeople, mockingbirds, as you say, for the government after going through that period. It's not just happening in the United States, it's happening right here, and these are the same people who are mocking you.
Yes, and it's been a reckoning for me, because, to be honest, I had a lot of respect for Sky News. I mean, I didn't know much about them, but I just thought, okay, this is a publication. They lean more conservatively. Obviously, they at least, at a bare minimum, believe in enough speech to allow me to defend myself against the accusations. And seeing the treatment of me this week, I now understand that, no, you are a part of the exact same media apparatus. This is all just a show. It's like, we're going to pretend we're on the left, we're going to pretend we're on the right, but we're all on the same team, and we work for the state. And when the state sends its marching orders, we follow it. So truly, I really just want to say shame on Andrew Bolt, because one of the topics that I cover the most is masculinity, right? What it actually means to be a man, the disappearance of traditional masculinity. Coming from a society, my grandfather raised me, where you had men who worked with their hands and understood that their purpose was to defend the family and to keep the family unit together. And now we have people in suits like Andrew Bolt who are smearing and libeling a mother of three, every instinct being violated. As a man, when you see a woman, you should be thinking, I want to help her. And he's doing that because he wants to serve the state. That's pathetic. Shame on you, Andrew Bolt. Seriously, shame on you as a man.
Now, I want to get back to Palestinians, if I may. Bizarrely, Candace, no country in the Middle East, no country bordering Gaza, is inviting these Gazans to live in their territories. Why do you think that is?
Well, first and foremost, I think no country should have to take refugees if they didn't create the problem. And I hear this come up, and I'm going, listen, you don't want them in Australia. I don't want them in America. Egypt doesn't want them, and they're bang next door, because the idea that a war should suddenly mean that somebody else is responsible and has to take the people that are moving is just wrong and immoral, right? And so, yes, of course, they understand that it's been a complex issue, that there has been a lot of terrorism that has been involved on both sides of the token. Why would any person, you just said, they support Hamas. Why would any person want to then inherit all of those problems and inherit all of that conflict?
Yeah, those who are neighbouring nations, those who are neighbouring nations probably know a little bit more about the Palestinians than all of us, 12,000 kilometres away. I want to ask you a couple of other things. You've been criticised because they say that you don't believe that man landed on the moon.
It's so funny for people to take this extraordinary thing that was like a Twitter joke. Like, what's one of the conspiracy theories that you have questions about? And certainly it was interesting. I read this document of this guy who was just very anti-moon landings, believes that it was a distraction because America was actually doing a bunch of stuff that they didn't want like LBJ was essentially Vietnam, Cambodia, things were going on. And he asks this question, and I just say to everybody who believes in moon landing, please somebody explain this to me very slowly. How did we get past the Van Allen belt, the temperatures and the radiation? And he shows that in 2005, NASA did this sort of diagram on their website and showed, we'd like to go back to the moon, but we don't know how to get through the Van Allen belt. Maybe we'd have to create these cement blocks, which begs the question, how are you asking this question in 2005 if we went in 1969? So this should be like a fun college debate. And I guess it's just because they're trying to look for anything to make it seem like I'm deranged, like I don't even
I'm
speak
with you.
about science.
Okay, let me ask you another one.
Show.
Let me ask you another one. Is Emmanuel Macron's wife transgender?
That 100%, I believe that Emmanuel Macron's wife is a man born Jean-Michel Trogneau. It was a report that came out in the Daily Mail, and I thought it was totally crazy and kooky. And I said, where is this coming from? And then I read the 6-part series put together by a journalist who is now running from the French state. 3-year investigation, proof, documents. Jean-Michel Trogneau has suddenly disappeared. Brigitte Macron didn't exist for the first 30 years of his life. It is remarkable to me that none of the journalists, which again gets at the point that this is Operation Mockingbird, they're just mockingbirds, will just simply read his report and say, this is problematic. Obviously, a very simple way to debunk this, Brigitte Macron, where is your brother? You allege, okay, yeah, Jean-Michel Trogneau is real, but it's not me, that's my brother. Why don't you just go on a walk with him down the street with reporters and debunk this madness? He won't. And people ask the question, they go, okay, why does it matter? Now they're starting to realize it is a bit of a weird thing. They don't know where Jean-Michel Trogneau is. There is no pictures of Brigitte Macron for the first 30 years of his life. And they go, why does it matter? Well, it matters because if the state is colluding to protect this kind of a secret, and when I say colluding, while these journalists were working on the piece, the Secret Service intervened. That's your first clue something's not right here. They intervened, wanted to know who was working on it. Like, was that a normal thing for the Secret Service to do? Like if I said, like, you lived as a woman for 30 years, would you send the Secret Service? You'd be like, no, you fool. Publish it so I can make fun of you because it never happened. And, it's just stunning to me that the state could collude to protect this secret.
But it's interesting. Candace, can I just raise this? Those who have criticised you for saying this have not done their full due diligence into the allegations surrounding it. So I don't understand why it's not a fair question to ask, especially when you're being privy to information that is compelling, that is quite alarming in terms of what's been covered up. I think you are entitled to ask the question. And for those of the media that criticise you for it, and they're doing it here, they're doing it in the United States, well, have they done the due diligence? Because until they have done the due diligence individually, and I haven't, I'm too busy to do it right now, if they have, well, then they can make a comment. I want to talk to you about COVID. How did the world get so sucked in by Big Pharma? I was sucked in during the pandemic, Candace. I believe the eminent immunologists, when they said, oh, no, they've just been very, very quick to do all of their great homework and their wonderful due diligence on these fabulous vaccines. You must take them. You must take another one. How about you take 7? Maybe we should take 20. And I believed and got sucked in, and I was very, very negative towards people who wouldn't take them because I thought it was a team effort. Every single study that I have seen since the pandemic has convinced me that we were conned.
We were absolutely conned, and I was one of the rare voices. That's when I was being called unhinged too, because I was one of the only people that was speaking out and telling people not to fall for this. And I will tell you basically the backstory. I was actually blessed in that I was vaccine injured when I was young against the Gardasil vaccine when I was 20 years old or 19 years old. And when I woke up after having like a mini seizure in a doctor's office, I did my research on that vaccine many years ago and realized I had been completely conned. They lied about the studies. And that actually set me on a journey regarding vaccines to do a lot of due diligence on all vaccines. And I came to the conclusion that the scientific community was a bunch of paid off cons who were getting paid off by the very manufacturers who were creating the vaccines. I mean, it is quite literally a cartel of sorts. And so I took a tremendous risk early on in my career and created a vaccine series for parents to say, here is the information. You do what you want with your children, but I want you to at least have access to these facts and this data and actually know real risk and not just believe the fear campaign, because that is how they get people to subject themselves for all vaccines. I mean, when I was growing up, we had to get like 8 vaccines. Today, kids have to get 72 from the time before they graduate high school. I don't know if you guys call it high school in Australia. And it relies upon fear the idea of an expert, and it's understandable. I'm so happy you said I was conned too, because I always say to people, if you got conned, you actually would have had to been either someone who was crazy, like you had to actually be crazy to believe that this many people could be a part of an evil apparatus to get you to do something, or you were someone who had an earlier experience like me and was awakened to like the scam of big pharma earlier on and began asking questions. So never fault yourself. Just be happy that you eventually got there, and that when these sorts of media campaigns happen again, you get to add yourself to the pool of people who are interjecting a different thought.
Yeah. Unlike the bedwetters during pandemic, I don't have a problem admitting that I got something wrong. And I've seen too much really in-depth study by mainstream medics, especially in New Zealand with those 99 million cases, to show that more damage was done than was ever expected to be done from this vaccine. And that is a very important point as far as I'm concerned. I've kind of run out of time. I've got 1,000 other things to ask you about, but we can do this at another time. I want to try and encourage people to go to your events, because I think you have every right to express your view, despite the fact that it's a conservative view. Tell people what you're going to do when you're on stage and how they can get their tickets.
Well, I'm going to talk about freedom, genuinely talking about this squeeze that I think we're all feeling from the government. And it's kind of arrived now at the Orwellian final instruction, which we're being told not to believe our own ears, not to believe our own eyes, and also don't believe your own thoughts. Like, don't think is kind of the new messaging that's coming down. We've hired experts that will do the thinking for you. You have a right to think. You have a right to be wrong. You have a right, if you want to jump on stage and debate a moon landing. Like, that should be fun stuff. They're now suddenly trying to make you think that you don't have a right to do that. And that's not the society that I grew up in. And it's not the society that I want my kids to grow up in. And so I want to invite people who believe in freedom, especially the people who disagree with me on anything I've just said. Like, you're the people I want there the most, because I'm not going to learn in an echo chamber of myself. I want you to say, well, here's actually what I think about childhood vaccines and why they're great, because everybody in the room will benefit from people having the courage to have conversations that the media apparatus seeks to ban, because they don't want us thinking independently. You know, independent thoughts produce independent families. I believe the nuclear family is the solve from the encroaching state that I feel is really encroaching upon all of us at this moment.
Okay, there's a link you should go to. Just go to candacelive.com.au. I'll put a link on the screen right now, candacelive.com.au, and you can get your tickets that way. You're bringing your family down under, or is it a solo trip?
I am bringing my husband, not going to bring the 3 kids because they are very, very young, and I just think that's a very long flight for them. But I wish I could bring them. I'm so excited to go. I'm excited to see New Zealand. I've never been to Australia. I've got some family there, which I'm hoping we'll be able to jump on the tour. All of this pending, obviously, Tony Burke's decision. But I just hope that he genuinely reconsiders, or at least does the due diligence and looks at what I've actually said versus what the Today Show is pretending that I said.
Well said, I must say. Thank you so much for your time. Fantastic to have you on the program. The more intrigue surrounded what you have said and your trip down under just compelled me to interview you, and I'm so glad that you took up the invitation. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your trip if it happens to Australia.
Thank you so much, and I hope that you have me back before we even get to the tour.
Done. I promise. We've got so much. We haven't even spoken about US politics. I can't believe it. But we'll do that next time. How's that?
Done.
Thank you, Candace. Candace Owens there. I hope you got a chance to understand the context in which she said the things that she'd said. Now, the interviews that she has done already have revealed some of what we've done here tonight, but there is so much that she's been accused of unfairly. And I wanted to get her on to go through some of those issues tonight, and I'm glad that we did.